And welcome to another one of our Player 2 review discussions. Today, I am Jess Zammit, and I am joined by my wonderful guest co-host. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Oliver Brandt. I write over at Vooks.net.
Cool. I'm super excited to have you here and to chat about what is a very, very exciting game. We are OFK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Uh, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it was like on my radar for
Mm,
ages because a queer
mm,
game pops up and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll
mhm.
I'll check that out at some point.
Yeah.
Um, but then yeah, when I actually like had it in hand, I was like, wow, this is like a whole different kettle of fish from what I was expecting.
Right?
Um,
Yeah. I remember seeing the
yeah,
trailer for the first time and just immediately from like the first note I was like, this is exactly my bullshit. This game is going to be
yeah,
like 100% what I want. And it didn't disappoint. It truly
no.
was my bullshit. It's how I feel.
Yeah, I kind of got the same vibe. So like anybody who like has followed me for any significant amount of time will know that like my like top game all time is Sayonara Wild Hearts. And that was a game that similarly was on my radar, and then when I had it in hand, was just like it blew me away. And
Yeah.
I think this might actually even be better than that, um,
Wow.
which is a pretty big deal. I mean, they're
Yeah.
both like experimental like album games, so
Yeah. Big
um,
words. Yeah,
yeah,
I feel like we should probably explain it. So for anybody that's not super familiar with what We Are OFK is, it's a musical biopic interactive narrative kind of game about a
yeah,
band called OFK and the kind of early days of the formation of the band. And alongside the game, there are songs that the band have released, a couple that come out or that are out now and will come out kind of shortly, and then more to be released as more episodes of the game get released. Um, which is a super cool concept. Definitely not something that I have seen before.
yeah. So like I didn't even realize that it was like episodic at first until I got the email sort of explaining it. I think that's something that like they probably could have advertised a little bit more, but like it's like it's not an issue, I don't think, right?
No.
But yeah, having like the episodes sort of timed with the music that's coming out is a really really neat idea. I don't think anybody really has ever done that kind of thing before.
No. I think the way it tells the story, because it's designed around these neat kind of little packages, and each episode is supposed to follow primarily kind of one character.
Yeah,
But each one also involves all of the characters. It's just kind of about whose perspective you're looking at the time. It feels like something that can be enjoyed like you would enjoy a TV show kind of thing, like week to
yeah,
week, just be hit with the feels and the drama and then let that settle and then, take a bit of time, play the
yeah,
next one. Um, so I think I like the fact that it's episodic.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think like it really works for it as well because like all of the episodes they're done, right? So like there's 5 episodes to it. They're all finished. They're all like in the package, and they'll just
Hmm.
be unlocked as time goes on. And that's
Yeah.
like sort of I feel a lot better approach than something like Life is Strange did, where like they intended to get it out every 2 months, but development is really difficult, so
Mm,
it's they often didn't hit that target, and then some
yeah.
were a little bit later and some were a little bit earlier, and it kind of just like messed with like the rhythm of playing it.
Hmm.
Here, that like each week a new episode is going to come out, and
Hmm.
I think that's really cool. Of course, we didn't really follow the whole episodic thing anyway because we
No.
had all of them available to us from the get go.
Yes. Yeah. I still feel like I wanted to space them out though. Like I only played one at a time. Um and I think what is really cool is that on the menu where it tells you the episodes, it tells you how long each one is going to take. So you
Yeah,
can kind of like plan your life around how long you're going to spend playing this game, which I really liked. Um it meant that I could plan to play them all in one sitting because I would make sure that I'd set aside the time to do that. Um Yes, but it was a little bit different for us. I kind of had to get it all done quick in preparation for release.
yeah.
So we
And
have,
another small,
yeah,
yeah,
you go.
just
Sorry.
another small detail about the runtime thing. If you do like have to pause for whatever reason, it will like
Mm,
tell you sort of what like how far you're in and how much time you've got left.
Oh, cool.
And it is like super aggressive about auto saving. So like if you need to like just quit the game or if it crashes, as happened with me a couple times, it does. Like I didn't have to replay a single second of it. It just, it's really really good about that. It'll take you exactly to where you were.
Damn, that's awesome. So yeah, to be clear, you played on Switch, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and my copy was a PS5 copy. Mine was pretty smooth. I actually didn't have any kind of issues with it.
Yeah, so I had two issues. I had two crashes. One of them was like just at the very start of like the first song sequence, and then another one was just like a random crash like halfway through a sentence. Other than that, like there was just like this tiny bug where like with dialogue options, it would like show the subtitles of like the option you didn't pick just like briefly.
Okay.
But other than that, like it's a smooth experience. Like neither of those things, because it does autosave so aggressively, like neither of those things are like big issues by any means, right? It's still an incredibly enjoyable experience.
No, 100%. And it's, we're playing pre-release, so for there to be so few issues like before it's even out there, it's pretty good. With a game like this, it's so hard to know where to even start like talking about it. So I think the most important, there's a couple of things that are the most important. One of the most important things to me is like the characters and their, I guess, relationships with each other. So there are 4 sort of main characters, and they have like a host of supporting characters, all who are voiced by like quietly amazing people. Like the server at the like boba shop that they go to is also voiced by the person that voices Pearl in Steven Universe. Which I didn't realize at the time, but learned afterwards. I was like, that's so cool. But yeah, okay. So how about you go first? Who is your favorite character of the 4?
It's a really difficult decision because like I really want to say Carter because I feel like Carter's like the coolest of the bunch, right? Like Carter had like, in my opinion, like the most interesting episode in terms of like, sort of character progression. But like the character that I identified with the most was like Luca by a long stretch. So like first of all, it's like really really rare to see like bi guy representation in any media. Like bi women are a little bit more common, but still not like super common. But like it's like just unashamedly bisexual. Like they don't like make a point of like saying like, oh, he's bisexual, whatever. It's just like, in one scene he's like, wow, that the girl serving us at the boba shop is like really cute. And then in the next one, like, he's texting a guy named Miguel on a dating app. So like that was like really, really, I don't know, it was really cathartic to me to see that kind of character just on my screen, because I've never seen a bi character in a game ever, really. Like there's a couple here and there, but like a main character, and like I don't know, I don't think anyone of the 4 main characters is like the main character.
No.
But I feel like Luca kind of like gets closest to that.
Luca or Itsumi maybe. Yeah,
Itsu is also really really fantastic. But like I don't know, for me like Luca, I'm I'm a bisexual person, I'm queer, I'm also a musician, and that means that like so much of like what Luca's struggles were is something that I have experienced in the past. And I don't know, it was just like there's like a whole like across like the first 3 episodes there's like Luca trying to like pick what song he wants to send to the producers, right? And he just can't decide. In part because like he likes all of them, and in part because he just doesn't think that any of them are really going to be good enough to send on to anyone. And like as someone who's like written a lot of music and like sent a lot of music out to like clients and stuff, like that's something that like I've done so much of in my life. It's just like all of these are both like fantastic and terrible, and I don't want anybody else to ever see them. So yeah, he was really good about that. But I also think Jay is fantastic as well, because I did a little bit of audio engineering. But I'll get into her a little bit later because I have a lot of notes about Jay.
You are just quietly, secretly, accidentally the perfect person to talk about this game. I'm just kind
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't like. I didn't expect that it would like hit quite as hard as it did, but then like it's just like even the first episode, seeing what like Luca was going through, I was like, damn, this is like
mm,
was like somebody watching me for like the past 10 years and like following my every move. Yeah, but
yeah.
like what character do you think you most resonated with, and more importantly, which one do you think is the best? Because
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's hard. The best is it's subjective. But I think it's probably unsurprising that the two that hit me hardest were the two that you have not yet mentioned. Um, which is the two kind of women. So Itsu, I love Itsu. Itsu is like this chaotic kind of gay like mess, but in a really fun, really kind kind of way. Um, I guess I like to think, I mean, I kind of identify with her. Like she, I don't know, cares really deeply about her friends and they're like the most kind of important thing to her. And she has like these dreams, but um she's kind of really about like, yeah, I want to do this thing with the people around me. And even like the conversation she has with people, they're so all over the place and she's so like scattered. Um and I don't
yeah,
know, that kind of kind of resonated with me too. Um she's yeah, very high energy, quite like I think anxious.
yeah,
Um which also kind of hit me. Like I'm not a musician, so I guess collectively these people and their jobs didn't um resonate with me as much as they did with you, but like I am a person who is kind of, a creative. I write about games, like I make games. Like this is um the archetypes of these people are the sorts of people that I identify with and that like are my friends. Like in every one of these characters, I was like, I know so many people that are Luca. Like,
yeah,
it just like the characters all feel so completely realized. Like they're proper, very, very well crafted kind of personas, I guess,
yeah.
in a way that like I haven't felt in a while in games. And I don't know if it was just the sheer queer energy that was like radiating off all of them, which maybe. But yeah, so for me it was Itsu. It was like this, like she wants to be brave and she wants to do all these big things and she wants to, be cool and um even like the way she interacts with Jay, she's like, I want to be this cool girl that Jay likes, but I don't know how to do that. Like I'm
Yeah.
doing my best. Um and yeah, I feel like I don't know, just doing her best but struggling, but still kind of doing the thing. That's like the story of my life, I guess.
Yeah, and I think what's like really
Yeah.
interesting about Itsu is that like you see that like she's got all of these things going on, right? So because
Mm,
she's like doing the social media for like a huge company, she's
mm,
got her recital stuff going on,
mm,
um, you know, trying to like set up things for the band,
mm,
trying to help like Luca and Carter through like all of their stuff,
mm,
and then like Jay enters the picture and like she's still like balancing it all. That
mm.
like when you get to that point, like I don't think we can talk about it too much, but when you get
Yeah.
to that point where it like sort of starts like the threads start getting pulled on that,
Mm,
like it is so heart-wrenching to watch because like you can kind of
yeah.
like see it coming from a mile away, right? It's like she
Yeah.
starts getting involved in things and it's like this is not going to end well. Like you can
Mm,
kind of tell that like she's just been through a breakup and like she's sort of
yeah.
like throwing herself passionately into whatever is in front of
Mm.
her.
Yeah, she just
um
feels so deeply. Like
yeah,
from the second it starts happening. Yeah, totally.
and then like that like when she starts throwing herself into all of those things, it's like this can only kind of end in a like really kind of heartbreaking way, and it does. And like throughout the entire time with like Itsu, I was like, I really want to like just like reach out to you and say like, hey, don't do this, but like you can't. You just have to like sort of sit there and watch her make those decisions that you
Yeah.
can't do anything about.
No, it's hard. Um, because I also get it. I get her desire to want to be the person that can do those things, that can like put herself in those situations and be cool and be detached, but she's just not. Like she just really feels every bit of it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and it's when it's good, and then things start falling apart, and you're like, no, this is bad for you specifically.
yeah,
Um, yeah. So I think Itsu is kind of the one for me, but Jay, I think I'm just in love with Jay. I don't know.
I would
Um,
honestly think any any person who is like generally kind of attracted to women would struggle to come away from this game and not be just totally in love with Jay.
Yeah. She's just so cool, and I get that she's not that cool, and like that's the thing, is that they're all these deeply flawed people, and they're all, kind of putting on a mask to do what they need to do to like get through life and try and achieve their dreams and whatever, but she's just so cool, man, you know?
And I think like I don't know, like there's like depth to just like even how they introduce her as a character,
Mm,
right? It's like because like obviously like she comes off as this like really cool composed person, and like
yeah,
just setting the scene a bit, this isn't spoilers because it's like the first 10 minutes of the
yeah,
first episode. So
yeah,
like Itsu is getting like harassed and hit on by like this like super straight
yeah.
terrible dude at the bar.
Gross dude, yeah.
um and like Jay comes in and just like basically says, get out of here, you're an absolute creep, and like stands up.
Mhm.
And it's like at first it's like, wow, she's really cool, and then it's like you kind of learn more about her and you realize that like the reason that she had the power to stand up and do that was because she's probably been in that situation hundreds and hundreds of times previously.
Yeah.
um and like it's the kind of thing that like doesn't like super like dawn on you right when you're watching it, because at first I
Mhm.
was just like, wow, she's so cool, good for her. And then like in later episodes where like we kind of see her getting thrown into like a very heteronormative situation, which
Yeah.
is just surrounded by a whole bunch of like straight guys that really don't care much about anything but themselves. And then
Mm,
like it just sort of like starts like you sort of like see that domino like flowing backwards, and it's like, wow, that
mm.
sort of explains so much about like where she is now. um
I guess for me, I mean, maybe this is like a perspective thing. I guess for me, it was less of a surprise, because I don't know, interacting with the world as a woman. I guess you kind of get used to those sorts of interactions. Like, I've been Itsu and I've wanted to be Jay, and I
yeah
know a lot of women in my life that are that because you do that because you've learned how to cope with that situation and how to kind of push
yeah
through it. So I guess from the beginning I was like, this woman's seen some shit. Like, this is
yeah
kind of her world and she's used to this world. That's why she's sort of sweeping in. But yeah, the way she does it, I'm just like white knight, I don't know, goddess woman coming in.
yeah
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like there's a lot of just like really small things about Jay that I think makes her a really compelling character. Like you see like the texts and like the video chats with her parents,
Mhm.
where like it's like abundantly clear that like she has never had a conversation with them about her sexuality and
Yeah.
doesn't ever plan on it.
Mhm.
Um, and
Yeah.
like that's like the way that that's handled is like a very real and like hard hitting way, because it's like the game never fully addresses the fact that she's not like out to her parents, but like
No.
it's just sort of like dripping in every interaction that she has with them.
Mm.
Um, but then like, yeah, I don't know. I think she's just a really complex character, and I think like there's going to be people that sort of play this game and sort of come away from it thinking that like she's kind of the bad guy.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
which like there were times when playing that I was like angry at her, but then I was also
Yeah.
like, you kind of have to do what you have to do, right? It's like
Yeah.
if I was in that situation, I probably would have done the exact same thing.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Like, I
so
played it and I was like, yeah, she feels antagonistic at times, but rather than being like, I don't care for this person, I felt much more like I want to shake her and be like, you're not even making the choice that makes the most sense for you, Jay. Like,
yeah,
this is not good for anyone.
and that's the thing. It's like it's pretty clear when she makes that decision that she doesn't feel it. Like it's not
Yeah.
something that she wanted to do. It's something that she felt compelled to do.
Mhm.
Um, but I will
Yeah.
say, again, I can't talk like too deeply about this, but like the sort of the concert scene where that text
Mm.
chain is unfolding is
Mhm.
genuinely like one of the most powerful scenes I think I've ever seen in the video game. Like
Yeah.
that was just so difficult to play.
Yes.
Because you're not even really playing, you're just like selecting answers and reading text.
Mhm.
Um, but like all of the options that it sort of presents you with, it's like there's no right way to go about this, but there's no other way to go about this.
Mm.
Um, and
My
like yeah,
heart.
it was like after that sort of happened, I was like, man, I need to like take a couple days off and just like
Yeah.
play some comfort food games, because like that was really really difficult to play.
Yeah.
in like sort of the best way possible.
Mm.
I say it was like difficult to play, but like it's difficult to play because it was like deeply affecting.
Yeah.
Because like I
Yeah.
think we've all kind of been in situations where we have to like have those uncomfortable conversations with people, and over text that's really difficult to do because
Mm.
both sides are kind of like reading the worst possible reading of that text.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was done really well, and in a way that like I think, I don't know, I don't want to play it again, but on the other hand, like I want everybody to have like played it at least once, because yeah, it's, man, so just difficult and fantastic.
I feel like my heart broke for everyone in that scene, like not just the people that
Yeah.
are involved in the exchange that you're talking about, but like every single character in that scene. It just, yeah.
Yeah. And like
Because you know what the fallout's going to be, and
yeah,
it's
and then like even like, you know, Carter being in that scene was like, obviously like they don't play a huge part of like that sort of interaction between them, but like there's like, if you like watch Carter throughout that scene, like they're kind of like getting what's going on, and like that is like, I don't know, I've been in those kind of uncomfortable situations, and it's like, what do you even do there? And I feel like what happens with Carter after that is like sort of very, it's not a direct result of what happened there, but it was like a very like, okay, I need to do this now rather than this is something I'd like to do in the future. And I really wish I could talk more about Carter's story because like it's really, really interesting. And that whole like reconnecting with people that you sort of like knew before you came out as queer, which I think is like kind of the vibe that they were giving off with that. It can be really, really difficult. And I think it's a really expertly told thing. Especially with like all of the stuff that happened in Carter's past as well, and just like I don't know, it's there's like a lot of thread lines, but they're all like married together so perfectly that like it's just genuinely fantastic.
Yeah. Like from like even the subtle choices that all the characters make with like which pieces of themselves to share with each other and which information to share with each other, and like you obviously as the player know what's going on, but seeing all of them make choices about like, okay, this is what's going on in like Itsu's life, but she's choosing not to share that with like, you know, with Luca or with Carter or, you know, even Jay. Like it's kind of this added layer of like, I know, like you see what they're struggling with, and you want them to kind of communicate in the way that you know that they should, but also you know that that's really hard because we've all been in those situations before. The way it is hard to not talk about the later episodes because the way it all comes together is very good.
Especially with like sort of like the Itsu stuff, the fallout of everything that happens with Itsu is like one of the most interesting and compelling parts of the game, but like we just can't really talk about it in depth because like it's huge spoilers for everything in between. Which is unfortunate, but I think it's something that I don't know, I wouldn't want to spoil for people anyway because it's something that you really have to experience yourself.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. What about debug? Are we allowed to talk about debug?
I think so. I mean, like debug is like in all like the advertising material, right? So like I think we can talk about debug.
Okay, cool.
Because debug's amazing, right? Like I like, I don't know. At first I was like, wow, they kind of like went like weird and sci-fi. But then like it very quickly turned into just like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Debug is adorable. And everybody should have debug in their life, I think is.
Yeah. And I think
like
terrifying. Yeah. And I like that like Itsu and another character that's later on just sort of like express that terror about like debug. Because they're like, you know, is it going to eat me? How far can it go? And like that conversation with like, you know, when Itsu is like questioning Carter about debug and they're like just like going into all of these things, it's like, you know, what can it do? How far can it go? All of that kind of stuff is I thought it was really funny because it was like all of these things that I was like kind of asking in my head about debug. I was like, how does like this work? And then they just like threw it up on screen and showed how that worked.
There are so
But
many
yeah.
clever choices. So many parts of this game are so clever.
Yeah. And I think like debug was like really important as well for like sort of adding a like teensy bit of like comic relief to what can otherwise be like a really dark game.
Yeah. You don't
Not
expect
dark in
it
the
because it's
yeah.
it's bright and colourful and whimsical and also awful and emotionally taxing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it's not dark because like anything overtly like
Yeah.
terrible happens, right?
No.
It's like nobody's like dying on screen or like
No.
oh this person just had a like close friend die or anything like that. It's nothing that's like an overtly dark situation. It's just like how people interact, and sometimes that can be like a really affecting thing for to sort of experience.
Just very real, I think.
Yeah.
It manages to be very real in a way that a lot of things don't quite get to, and it hits you quite hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the music though? I don't know if that's what you were about to jump
Yes,
into
it
next.
is exactly what I was about to say. Yeah, I mean, I've had Follow Unfollow, which is the single that's out at the moment. Like you can listen to it on Spotify. Stuck in my head for more than a week, like since I started playing it. And I am super into it, and it's not even the sort of music that I usually like. But
Yeah. So like
yeah.
the thing that I have like at the top of my notes for like the music in this game is that like I did not know that I like this kind of music until I listened to it, and now it's my favorite. And it's like that is like the music in this game because like it isn't the kind of thing that I would go out and like listen to.
No.
But it's really really good.
It
And
is.
I don't think any of the songs I would say are bad at all. Like
No.
none of them. I enjoyed all of them. I especially liked Jay's song, but that's not going to be out for a while.
Yeah.
But like the visuals for that, because like there's playable. Well,
Yes.
it's playable.
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult to say that. It's like
Yeah.
you kind of like play a sort of like WarioWare
Interactive.
style like mini games as the music videos are playing.
Yeah.
And like that I don't know. It's just like a fun thing to do while the music is playing. But it also like makes you feel involved in what's happening.
Yeah.
But like the music video for Jay's song is like it's just so powerful.
So
And like
powerful.
yeah, as I said, like there are gonna be people who like play sort of Jay's section and sort of come away with her as the villain, and like obviously the music video kind of plays into that a little bit.
No. I like
Yeah, like that's the thing, right? Is that like it like I don't know. I have in here as well that like I don't know if like the story came first and then the music was written for the story, or if
I
the
don't
music came first and then the story happened, or if they happened sort of together. But like I don't think there's ever really been like music in a video game that's quite as like synergistic as what's on display here. Because like if you listened to like Follow Unfollow in sort of like in isolation from the game, right? It's still a great song, but like when you pair it like with the game and what's happening in the game as that song plays, it just like it takes on a whole new life. And they've done a really good job. And like the videos are like I don't know, they're not like they're like classic sort of like pop music kind of videos, right? Where they, like things get a little bit weird and like things happen. But I think they're done in a really good way. Even if like the interaction isn't like particularly deep, I think I wouldn't want it to be deeper than it is.
I don't want it to be deeper. I would like it if sometimes I had more of an idea of like what I was doing, I guess.
Yeah.
There were some bits where I was like, yeah, I get it, we're just vibing, like it's fine, but I also would like to literally know what my actions are causing, like what is happening right now.
Yeah.
And it's not
like
the biggest deal, but
the one with Itsu where you have to like collect the shards. I was like, is something gonna happen if like collect the shards? Like what am I doing here? Right? Like and like it didn't seem like I had the opportunity to collect all the shards, so I don't know if like that was something that I missed or if it was something that is like intentional, like there's like always one more shard to get or whatever. But yeah, it was like a little bit unclear there.
Yeah.
And then there's like one right at the very end where it's like I didn't know if I was in charge of it or not.
Yes, I feel that too.
Yeah.
I was like, this is cool, but am I doing this? I don't know.
Yeah, it was like I was just kind of like pressing things and like using the analog sticks. And I was like, I
Yeah.
think I'm influencing this. I think I'm doing it, but this really just could be how it goes normally.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's still fun. They're all still fun, and it's still cool. It's just like a bit confusing.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, overall, I think they do what they set out to do, which is just to get you to engage with the music a little bit more.
yeah, and like it's sort of different from like again bringing up Sayonara Wild Hearts again, where that was like all music. There was sort of like no like non-music sections to it.
Mm.
I think this like sort of building up to the music and then like sort of letting it breathe afterwards really just makes the music like hit that much harder.
Yeah.
And it's all just like perfectly timed to come in at the right point.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really difficult thing to do in a game like this. It's just like because like there are some where like the song happens like sort of halfway through the episode. Most of them are like quite towards the end. But
Yeah.
there's one episode where the song sort of comes in like halfway through-ish, like sort of halfway to like 2/3 through. And I think if it had been later in the episode, it wouldn't have been quite as impactful because like the way that it gets introduced and the way that it plays out is like really necessary for like having that breathing room at the end of it.
I
So
feel like during those like particularly emotional moments, I was kind of like I found myself asking myself, being like, "Is it this? Is this it? Is it going to happen? Are we going to get the music video now? Like, is
Yeah.
it coming?" Sometimes it did, and sometimes it didn't. But they definitely were always, I think, perfectly placed for what
Yeah.
they were trying to convey.
And like after that first episode, when you know that like there's going to be a music video, like you do start sort of like anticipating it and like wondering like, is this going to be it? But then like when it does come, you're like, oh yeah, that's the perfect place for it, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I like there's so much more that I wish that I could say about it, but like embargoes and like not wanting to spoil people.
I know.
Because like I do think like the episode with Carter in it is like something that people are gonna like discuss for like years and years and years. Because like Carter themselves is like a wonderful character. Like there's no non-binary representation in games.
Yeah, no.
I mean, apart from literally 2 Nintendo games like within the space of 2 months.
Yeah. Very rare.
Like other than that, very rare. And yeah, I think the sort of the text conversations that Carter has with their parents is really, I don't know, it's sort of hard to sit through because I don't know, it feels like I was like, it's really difficult to explain. It's like I shouldn't be here for this conversation, right?
Yeah.
It's like this is a conversation that I should not be a part of. But you're sort of still there for it. Like it feels like I'm kind of snooping, and I don't know. It's like obviously supposed to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. But yeah, I don't know. Carter is wonderful. And like I don't know, they take sort of a stepped back role compared to the other 3 main characters. But I think that was probably a good call. Because like they don't have the kind of sort of strong energy that would be required to really be present in everybody's through lines. Like you can tell right from the get-go that like Carter isn't the kind of person that involves themselves in other people's lives too heavily. And like obviously that's there's reasons for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was really well done in that regard.
Yeah, I think that they're not necessarily a prominent role, but they're definitely a constant in everybody's life. And I think I think you're right. There's reasons why that's the case, and I think it's a very clever way of starting to tell that story before they really tell that story. Yeah, I wish we could talk about it, but we just can't. Yeah. They're all,
I think sort of what surprised me when I got to sort of Carter's episode was that like watching like the sort of like opening like theme song kind of thing is like you see like the glimpses of the characters like as they are normally and sort of like what they're like underneath, right? And like in the first few episodes like it sort of showed like that like cutaway with Carter's one, that was like, how is that like possibly going to happen naturally, right? Because like
Mm-hmm.
they seem like such a chill, laid back person that like just doesn't really have much going on. And then they like really hit you with it, and I was like,
Yep.
that I don't know. I just have to ask, like, did you skip like the opening theme at all? Because like it gives you an
No.
option to skip it, but I
Mm-mm.
did not skip it even
Never.
once.
No.
um, Partly because it's like really good, but like also because
Catchy.
I, yeah. But like I also felt like this is like sort of the ritual I need to like prepare for what I'm about to see, because I know that like it's not always going to be great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I want to talk more about Carter, but like I need everybody else to play the game.
Yeah.
And like even when it releases like in a few days, like it's still
Yeah,
going
we
to be
still
like a
can't.
couple weeks before
Yep.
anybody like plays Carter's bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Carter's bit, I think, is very special in the
Yeah,
story that it tells. And they all are like they're such incredible, I think, character studies. I guess like Jay is interesting to me, I guess, in the way that we sort of touched on before, where you could come away from it thinking that, maybe she's the antagonist, but she's clearly not. Like, there's clearly so much
yeah,
more going on. I remember reading an interview not long after the game was first announced with the creators, where they were talking about wanting to have characters that were like, even the characters that you think are presented as like the good characters, as like innocent and nice and kind and like morally good, I guess,
yeah,
have these shades of gray and do things that their actions hurt other people.
yeah,
And I think that that's very true. Without saying too much, like
yeah,
characters that you don't expect to have these moments that can cause harm to other people. Not horrible harm, but like, actions have
yeah,
consequences. Um yeah, that happens, and I think it's just, I keep coming back to it because it's just such a good exercise in like shades of grey, I think, for
yeah,
every one of those characters. Like their
yeah. Because like
motivations, they're so clear. Like, yeah.
yeah, because it's like I don't know. As I said, like I think people will come away and like I think honestly, like particularly like cishet guys are going to come away from it and think that like Jay is the villain.
Yeah.
But like it's hard to look at like what Jay does and be like, that's objectively worse than like some of the stuff that Itzy does, or some of the stuff that Luca does, or some of the stuff that Carter does, right? Like
Mhm.
none of it is like objectively worse than that. I
Mhm.
think so. Like it's going to be really interesting in that regard to see sort of how people go with that, because like I have a feeling this is the kind of game that like I would get into fights with people about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, because it is like all about those shades of grey. Like all of these are good people who make bad decisions, and like that's who people sort of are generally, right? Everybody
Mhm.
at most people at their heart are good people,
Yeah.
that like often make bad decisions. Like I've made some terrible decisions and hurt people in my life, and like most
Yeah.
people have.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
and like showing that on screen and like not just saying like this makes this person bad now. Um,
Yeah.
is something that like not a lot of games are willing to do,
Yeah.
because like generally in a video game, especially like a small game like this, like if a
Mhm.
person does a bad thing, they're a bad person, and
Yeah.
therefore like that's the villain now.
Mm.
um so yeah, part of me thinks that like I don't know, there's going to be a lot of people like not ready for like this kind of nuanced storytelling, um
Yeah.
but I hope that it's fairly well received. I don't know. I'm so worried about like a whole bunch of like cishet people are going to come in and be like, I don't get
Mhm.
this. It's not right. It doesn't make any sense. Why did this happen?
Yeah.
Because there's some stuff like sort of towards the end where it's like, I don't know. I feel like to a cishet person, they would be like, wow, this was like so obvious. But like if you've been in that situation, you know that it's absolutely not that obvious.
Mhm.
It's like I don't know. Queer relationships are messy and difficult to wrangle with sometimes, and we
Yep.
see with Luca, there's sort of like this whole like queer dating app thing where it's like just so much more volatile than like some of the straight dating apps, and
Mhm.
it's like a whole thing, and like there's going to be a lot of people who don't understand that.
Yes. Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like people should still play it, even like cishet guys, and like try and get something out of it, because like I don't know. For me, it's like these are like my experiences playing out on screen, and it's not something that I could like sit down and tell somebody about. But they can sit down and play a game about it, and maybe just like understand queer people just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping for with this.
Yeah. I 100% I agree. I mean, my dating life is notoriously not that volatile because I've been with the same person since I was in high school, um but it's the community that I'm part of, and it's the lives that all my friends lead, which is why it's very like it's relatable to me in a different way, I guess. Um it feels to me like I've played a bunch of games that make me feel similar ways that this did, but they're all these really raw personal experiences that have been published by like one person on itch.
Yeah.
And those sorts of games don't usually get the kind of audience that this game is going to get. And so I feel like that trepidation where I'm like, is everybody ready? Is this going to hit the same way? I don't know, but I'm really excited that something that tells a story like this is being released on such a I mean, it's not even realistically such a grand scale. Like we're not talking like a AAA title, but like
No.
it's still big. It's still so much bigger than stories like this usually get as a platform. And so it's exciting, but yes, for all the reasons you just mentioned, deeply
exciting.
Scary.
Yeah. It is, truly terrifying, because like I don't know, it's like, as I said, like there's a lot of like Luca's life that's like, wow, that's my life, and then like I'm terrified to see what people think of that, because I'm like, well, if they're saying that like there's something wrong with Luca's life, then that feels like there's something wrong with my life. So like that's like, I don't know, because it is like a story that is like so personal to like sort of the queer experience. If anybody comes in and like says that like that experience is like wrong, or like there's like issues with it or whatever, it feels like it's going to be personal, right? Like having played this, it's like any criticism of like this kind of game and like sort of what happens in this game is going to feel like criticism of the experiences that I've had. Which is like a really weird feeling to have after playing a game.
Yeah. I agree. If anyone comes for Itsu, I'm going to be like, wow, I'm upset. Deeply upset.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. I've sort of like, since playing it and sort of like just running it through in my head, is like, I can kind of guess based on like the experiences that I've had what people are going to object to about certain characters, right? I know that there's going to be a certain subset of people who think that Itsu is like incredibly annoying and like that kind of thing, and like that, like it frustrates me, because like I know plenty of people like that, and they're all like really wonderful people. But yeah, I don't know. I will say as well that like the texts in that game, and how like everybody has their own sort of distinct texting style. I'm like 100% certain that like a lot of those texts were like ripped from actual texts that have happened between like the developers and other people. Because like particularly like Itsu's texts, like I have a friend who is very much in sort of like the same kind of bouncy personality as Itsu, and like they're exactly the kind of like text conversations that we have. It's just like completely off the rails. Like, if you mention like just like some random non sequitur, like that becomes the topic of conversation now. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like sort of like deeply attached to all of these characters. And like I wish I could just like get to know them more, but then I realized like, hey, this is a video game.
Yeah, it's upsetting that way, but you can just listen to their music as a fictional but real sort of band. When all the singles have been released, which is, I guess, kind of cool. It's like this weird blurred line between what's real and what's not. It's odd, but
yeah,
in a good way.
But like, I kind of feel like, I don't know, there's like so much more potential for more of this, right? Like, there's, I don't know, I want to see more of OFK's story, right? Like, I want to see more of like how things go after that that very defined endpoint where things like start happening. And I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. I like maybe they'll just keep releasing music. Maybe they'll like make more games in the future.
Mhm.
But like I think sort of like no matter how it like turns out, it's something that I'm gonna like be keeping an eye on, right? Because like if it's just the music, I'll be like 100% happy with that.
Yeah.
And if it's like games as well, then I'll also be 100% happy with that. Like no matter how this like turns out, like
Mm.
I'm a big fan of OFK.
Yeah.
Um, but
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't know. It's just such a weird game. I don't know. I find myself like obviously like you and I, we both write about games
Mm.
a lot. Um,
Mhm.
but I find myself like when I go to like write something about this game, just like at a loss for words. Like I don't know how to put words onto paper for this because
Mm.
like I I don't know. I've never been like that before. Every single time like I've played a game, I was like, I know exactly what I need to say about this game. But this one, it's just
Yeah.
like, what can I say about this game that isn't just like writing about myself?
Yeah.
And
That.
like I think
Yep.
at the end of the day, it's going to be one of those situations where I am writing about myself because like, how
Mm.
can you not?
Yeah. I mean, so at this point, I've written my review, but I already know, having read it back, that it doesn't capture everything that I feel because it can't. Like, there's no way to describe this game and its impact because, yeah, like you said, we write about games a lot. Like, there's a lot of times where you can look at something, you can be like, this is objectively kind of good, or this is objectively not good. Like,
Yeah,
trying to write about this as a gaming experience, I'm like, was I 100% engaged all of the time? No, like there were moments where I drifted off, where they were having text conversations that were kind of like nothing,
yeah,
and went nowhere, and weren't that interesting. But like at the same time, it needed those moments to feel real in the way that it felt real, because it's like, yeah, that's how I feel when I'm texting my friends. Sometimes we have these weird conversations that just, I don't know, go up, yeah, like you said, kind of off the
yeah,
rails, just go in weird directions, and you zone out, and like, yeah, everything that it did, I think it needed to do to be what it was, which is a really vague statement, I realize, and like doesn't, um,
yeah. It's like I don't know.
yeah,
Like I've got my notes for it, and like I don't like putting scores on games at the best of times. But
yeah,
with something like this, right? It's like, how do I give it a score? Because like this is far
yeah,
and away like the most like personal and opinionated thing that I'm going to write, I think.
hmm,
And it's like I totally understand if somebody wanted to give it like a 2 out of 5. I
yeah,
absolutely don't agree with that. But like
no,
if somebody played it and didn't resonate with it and it wasn't for them, I
mm,
totally understand why somebody would give that a score. For
yeah,
me, it's like I don't know how I can give it anything but like a 5 out of 5 because like
mm,
it's unique and I don't know, in my eyes, like it's like just perfect as it is, right? It might not be the best game in the world.
hmm,
It might not be, you know, you know, technically perfect or whatever,
yeah,
but everything that the game is shouldn't change, right? There's like
yes,
there's nothing about that that I would say I need to change this particular thing.
hmm,
Um, so
yep,
it's yeah, it makes like writing about it and scoring it and like you know putting my weight behind my words is like just so difficult because it's yeah, it just can't be described. It's like the beauty of this game is how it interacts with you as a person, and like
hmm,
you can't play that out, right? Like you can't just like write like this is how it interacted with me as a person because like I don't even really understand every level on which it interacted with me.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yep,
it's one of those games where it's like every single person is going to have a completely unique and different experience with it,
yep,
despite it being the same game for everyone.
yeah,
We talk about like Breath of the Wild, where everybody has their own experience because they do things different.
hmm,
But this is like kind of the exact opposite, where it's a very linear, on rails experience, but
mm,
the way that everybody has lived their life is going to impact how they perceive this game.
yeah,
Um, which
that
is
is-
yeah, just such a difficult thing to grapple with, like mentally. I
yeah,
genuinely think I'm going to be like figuring this whole thing out in my head for like weeks, if not months. Like
mm,
I'm probably going
yeah,
to replay it once like all the episodes are out again. Um,
hmm,
I might like replay it or like have my sister or one of my friends like play it through while I watch.
Mhm.
in the sort of episodic release, because like I really want to see how they do things.
Yeah.
Because like
And
there
it
are
encourages
choices.
that. Like
Yeah, yeah,
there's a mode for that where it's like gather all your friends around and like
yeah,
make this profile and watch together. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, because like you do make choices, but it's not like
Mm.
a Life is Strange situation where like those have dire consequences down the track. And I really like that about it as well. Like the
Yeah.
choices that you're making like aren't consequential,
Yeah.
but they do have consequences.
But they shape how you view your version of the character and how they're interacting
Yeah,
with the situation, I think. And like those really, really tiny differences where I look at it and I'm like, this is how I would say it, and saying it any differently to that skews the meaning of how they're approaching this situation
yeah. It's sort of
so
like it comes back
differently.
to that concert conversation as well.
Mm.
Right? It's like when I was like writing Jay's texts, it's like
Hmm.
there is a way that I have to pick, right? Like
Yeah.
I could not pick the other options there because
Mhm.
like if it were me, that's exactly what I would try to write.
Mhm.
Um, but
Yeah.
then like just sort of like taking a step back and looking at it, it's like I can understand why another person would pick a different choice because like the way that like everybody handles that situation is like it's
Different.
it's just not great. Nobody
Yeah.
handles that entire situation well.
No.
Everybody does bad things in response to that situation.
Very
Um,
yes. Yeah.
so like the way that like anger is directed, like who you think is sort of in the right with the way that they're reacting and doing things is like going to change depending on like how you view these characters. And
Mhm.
I think that's why like having those subtle differences is really important. Um,
Yeah.
I will say another one in Carter's episode.
Mm.
I really want to talk more about it. But in
Yeah.
Carter's episode, like there's a really, I don't want to say it's a fantastic moment because it's not fantastic. It's like really uncomfortable, but like the dialogue options that you're picking isn't what you're saying, what Carter is saying. It's what Carter's thinking, and
Mhm.
like you don't really have any
Oh
control over
yeah.
what Carter ends up saying.
Mm.
Um, and like I think that was a really interesting way to do it because like generally for like the rest of the game, right? If you pick a
Mm.
dialogue option,
Mm.
that's generally what they're going to say. They're going to say something that's kind of in the vibe of that, in the way that like Fallout does that kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, but like when you get to Carter's section, it's like you're just picking what they're thinking, and like you don't really have any control over what they end up saying. I don't
Mhm.
know if that section is any different if you pick different dialogue options.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's no way like I could play through it again, but you know
That's
that's another
hard.
time
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
um, but like I I don't know. I felt like I've been in that kind of situation where like my thoughts are just like running wild, and then
Mm.
like I know that I sort of have to play nice.
Yeah. There's
Um,
a societally respected way
yeah,
to act. Yeah. Yeah.
especially when you're with like friends and like you don't want to like annoy your friends or like
Yeah.
cause a scene or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but if I don't know if I'm allowed to dwell on this too long, I'm just gonna like spoil the entire story.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. We need to stop really because if we don't, it's just yeah. I feel like even after this conversation, thinking about all these things again, I'm gonna have to go and sit down and just like stare into the middle distance and like just contemplate what each separate bit meant to me. Um, but yeah, look, it's special. I think is really
yeah,
the only way that I can describe it. I've definitely never played anything like it. I've had those feelings, like playing Life is Strange feels the same way to me that
yeah,
you're describing. Like I don't like playing Life is Strange True Colors last year. I finished that game and then I just had to sit there for days and just be like, I don't know how I'm gonna write about this because this is just so
yeah.
like.
I was exactly the same playing that.
Mhm.
It was such a difficult experience, and I think
Mhm.
like even though like the embargo had like hit, I was like a
Yeah.
week
Same.
late with it because like
Yep.
I couldn't write about it. Like it was
No.
just such a strong experience, and this
Mm.
is kind of the same. Although I
Yeah.
will be writing it, you know, before the well, hopefully
Yeah.
before the embargo.
Yeah.
Um,
Um. Yeah. It's it's rare that you get to feel that about games, and it's
yeah,
scary and hard, but really exciting when that happens. I think, and I think that that's the kind of game that this is. It's just
yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. I said when I was talking about this with a friend that like I think there's going to be a moment, at least one moment in this game that every queer person sees themselves in, right? It's like even if you don't see yourself in like any of the four main characters, right? There's going to be at least one singular moment where you're like, shit, that's me, that's my life.
Yeah.
And I think that like that's a really powerful thing because I don't think a single queer person could play it and not experience that moment.
No. It just feels like such a deeply queer experience as a whole package. Like, yeah.
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 And like we need more of these kinds of games because like
100%.
the fact that like this is the first one that is like I'm not gonna say it's like the first like wholly queer game, but like it feels like the first game that like with the audience that it has is prepared to be as brave as it is.
Yeah. There's no way for it not to be queer.
Yeah. And
It
that's
just
like
inherently is. Like it's yeah.
And like that's the thing, right? It's like none of these things. It's like none of these characters are particularly labeled, and that's one of the things that I really really appreciate about this game, right? It's like we don't know that Itsu is a lesbian. She might be bisexual. She might, you know, just happen to get into relationships with women sometimes. It's like really difficult to know.
Yeah.
And that's what's so fantastic about it, right? Because if you, I don't know, if you've spent much time in the queer community at all, you just sort of like stop looking for labels and just, you know, sort of bask in the fact that there is a queer person here. And that's sort of like what I get out of this, right? Is that like it was just like so familiar and so comforting to play a game where it felt like I was like just sitting and having a conversation with queer people.
Yes.
Because
exactly that.
Just don't get to do that in video games very often.
No.
And that's why this is just really good.
Yeah. And look, to be honest, that's why the two of us, I think, you know, having this conversation right now, and why I wanted to talk to you about this game. Because I think for a certain audience, particularly the queer community, this game is going to be really important. And I hope that I get to see a lot of queer people talking about it. Because I know that there are a lot of spaces in kind of games discourse where, you know, there will be people that this game won't resonate with that are going to be covering it, and that's fine and that's good, and that, you know, games are for all different kinds of people, and not every game is for every person, but I just hope that every type of game is going to, you know, get its time to shine and be considered by its audience, I guess.
I mean, like this is definitely the kind of game where I think like I'll be searching out like queer content creators to see how they sort of interact with it, because like I don't know. As I said, it's like it's a game that is like deeply shaped by who you are as a person.
Yes.
And I kind of want to see how that resonates with other people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. I want to know how every single person in the whole world feels about this game, unless they're going to tell me it's bad, in which case maybe I don't. Maybe I can't emotionally take that. I don't know. But we'll find out. All right, we could genuinely talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but we should probably wrap up. Is there anything you would like to say about the game that you didn't get to say before we finish?
I would say like if you have the opportunity to, don't listen to the music before you go in. Because I didn't, and I think the way that the music is integrated into it makes for a really compelling experience, and I feel like I would have sort of spoiled myself a little bit by listening to all of those things first. I did listen to Follow Unfollow because it's a really good song, and I heard like a tiny glimpse of it in the trailer, and I was like, I need to listen to that. But the rest of them, I think don't listen to the soundtrack beforehand. But also, once you've finished, absolutely listen to the soundtrack because they deserve all of the money.
Yep. Yeah, I have Follow on repeat. I didn't hear it until I like played the game, and then I heard it in the game, and since then, I don't know, just makes me think of the game and makes me smile. So it's, you know, a good song, but also the memories attached. Yeah, I think that's a super good point. Yeah, totally agree. All right. Well, before we go, where can people find you and your future thoughts on this game?
So yeah, you can find my future thoughts on Vooks.net. That's books with a V at the start. and all of the Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all of that stuff is Vooks.net all spelled out. So that's VOOKSDOTNET. And I will probably be gushing about this for weeks on Twitter, probably years on Twitter, honestly. And that's at Chocobalt, which is CHOCOBALT.
Amazing. I will absolutely be joining you in talking about this for years and years and years. You can find me on Twitter as well at Jess, or Player2 at Player2AU on Twitter, or player2.net.au if you want to read the review that's going to be coming out in, I don't know. You'll be able to read it now by the time this discussion goes up. So yeah, thanks for joining us and listening to us ramble about queer goodness and sadness and I don't know, emotions. And yeah, thank you. See you later.